In a matter of 5 minutes, the world's most advanced airliner was at risk of falling out of the sky, taking all 440 passengers with it. This is one story I could not wait to cover. If you do enjoy, please consider subscribing, as it really does help the channel. November 4th, 2010, QF32, a state-of-the-art Airbus A380, gracefully stands at the gates of Changi Airport in Singapore after arriving from London. The aircraft is being refueled and boarded with passengers and cargo bound for their final leg to Sydney, Australia. This flight would look a little bit different to usual due to the flight deck being occupied by 5 pilots as opposed to the usual 2 or 3. The captain was undertaking his annual line check, which was standard for Qantas pilots, and what a flight it was going to be for him and his check captains. The captain would be the pilot flying, the first officer would be the pilot monitoring, the second officer was sitting at the back amongst the check captain and the supervising check captain. At 9:56 a.m. local time, QF32 took off from Changi Airport. Following a normal takeoff, the crew retracted the landing gear and flaps and changed the thrust setting to climb. About 5 minutes later, while maintaining 250 knots in the climb and passing 7,000 feet, the crew heard 2 loud bangs. The ECAM display suddenly shot out a total of 119 system failure messages, which the first officer was now responsible for working through. The captain contacted Singapore Air Traffic Control and declared a pan-pan, an urgency call that, while not as severe as a life-threatening mayday, still indicates a serious situation requiring prompt attention and gives the flight priority handling. The captain then used his extra hands in the flight deck to his advantage and had his very own check pilot calculating landing weights, stopping distances, and approach speeds to see if they'd even be able to land back at Singapore. Yes, the runway is a whopping 4 kilometers long. However, with the A380 fully loaded with passengers and fuel, they calculated that they would only have 350 meters to spare if they landed according to plan. The second officer went into the cabin to examine the damage. He was shocked to see a gaping hole through the wing's leading edge and also the upper wing, with fuel pouring out from behind the engine. This would explain the crazy amount of system failures that the pilots were getting, as there are so many critical systems that run through the A380's wings, such as hydraulic lines, fuel lines, and so on. While this was unfolding in the air, confusion and chaos was unfolding on the ground in a local neighborhood on Batam Island in Indonesia. Several buildings and other property were damaged when a piece of the A380's engine fell from the sky. This piece turned out to be a section of the intermediate turbine disc from the number 2 engine. This will play a critical role in determining the cause of this incident. The aircraft was now in a holding pattern east of Changi Airport, while the crew were going through all of the appropriate checklists and calculations. This would take almost 1 hour to complete, along with a control check which the captain performed to see how much manual control he would have whilst coming into land. And after nearly 2 excruciating hours in the air, the crew finally set course back to Changi Airport. Emergency services lined the runway. With only partial flight controls and no ability to dump fuel, the A380 approached with extreme care. The captain flew the final approach, and despite the aircraft being 40-odd tons over its maximum landing weight, they touched down. As the overweight, system-deprived plane was barreling down the runway, it was chewing up a whopping 80 meters every second. A brake system failure meant the aircraft couldn't stop as expected, so the crew had to rely on manual braking and thrust reversers from the remaining engines to pull the big bird up. Due to this, the plane's brakes became extremely hot, and then finally, they came to a stop with just 150 meters of runway to spare, half of what they had planned for. The crisis wasn't over just yet. Fuel was now leaking dangerously close to the boiling hot brakes. And now, because of the potentially dangerous situation outside, the captain ordered the passengers to stay in their seats while the firefighters laid fire retardant foam around the aircraft. After the crew shut down their 3 remaining engines, they received a radio call from the fire chief outside asking them to shut down engine number 1. And to their confusion, they looked out the window and saw engine number 1 was still running. The damage to the wing cut through the controls which are required to shut down the engine. The firefighters simply could not do their job, with one of the biggest aircraft engines in the world still running only a few meters away. And 1 hour later, the engine finally shut down. Miraculously, all 440 passengers and crew safely exited the aircraft via the stairs and were shocked to see the damage that lay behind them. So, what caused the most automated $400 million airliner to almost go up in flames, not only in the air, but also on the ground? Well, investigators concluded that the uncontained engine fire on Qantas Flight 32 was caused by a manufacturing defect in the Rolls-Royce Trent 900 engine. Essentially, a misaligned oil feed pipe inside the turbine area of engine number 2 led to an oil leak. This oil then leaked onto hot engine components, causing an oil fire. The fire then disintegrated the intermediate pressure turbine disc and propelled out of the engine, ending up on Batam Island. As the turbine disc left the engine, shrapnel damaged the left wing, hydraulic systems, fuel tanks, electrical wiring, and flight control systems. It turns out that Rolls-Royce's quality control processes failed to catch a critical flaw during engine manufacturing, the misaligned oil pipe. And alarmingly, 34 other engines at the time were found to have similar issues. To prevent this from ever happening again, Rolls-Royce introduced software that automatically shuts off fuel to the engine if a similar failure is detected. They also redesigned key components and strengthened their inspection procedures. The odds of this exact chain of events happening were incredibly slim. It kind of reminds me of those Final Destination movies. And yet, it happened with not just 2, but 5 highly trained pilots in the cockpit. And lastly, since this was the captain's annual line check, does this legendary landing mean that he passed? Let me know in the comments below. If you did enjoy this video, please consider subscribing, as it really does help grow the channel.